I'm Peyton Hayes, 34, a freelance journalist scraping by in Seattle, where the rain mirrors the weight I've carried my whole life. Nothing could have prepared me for the moment my world shattered at our family's annual reunion at the Caldwell estate on Lake Tahoe. My brother, Ethan Caldwell, 38, a ruthless corporate lawyer with a smile as sharp as his ambition, slapped my 7-year-old daughter Ava across her delicate face for the crime of singing too loudly. Crack of his hand against her cheek echoed like a gunshot in the opulent lake house, freezing time. Worse, my father, Richard Caldwell, 62, a retired real estate tycoon with a heart as cold as his investments, smirked and said, "That girl needs to learn some shame." My mother, Margaret Caldwell, 60, an event planner who polishes our family's image like fine crystal, giggled as if it were all a cruel joke. They didn't know the documentary microphone, set up by my brother-in-law Lucas Bennett, captured every damning word and sound. This is the story of how I fought to protect Ava and tore apart the toxic web my family wove around us. Growing up a Caldwell meant living in Ethan's shadow. He was the golden son, molded in our father's image, charming, aggressive, untouchable. I was the disappointment, the one who asked too many questions, who dared to challenge Richard's iron rule. "Peyton never knows her place," Margaret would sigh at family gatherings, her disappointment as practiced as her smile. Ethan thrived on their praise, climbing the corporate ladder with a predatory hunger, while I learned to shrink, to survive. By 18, I fled to Seattle, chasing freedom through journalism. There, I met Nathan Brooks, a software engineer whose kindness felt like salvation. We married too young, at 22, desperate for a family that saw me. But when Ava was 4, Nathan's betrayal, an affair with a coworker, shattered our fragile happiness. I didn't tell my family the truth. I knew they'd twist it into my failure. Now, as a single mother, every day is a battle to give Ava the love and security I never had, to ensure she never doubts her worth. That day at Tahoe, I realized some battles can't be avoided. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Growing up in the Caldwell household was like living in a gilded cage, where every move was scrutinized and my place was always at the bottom. The sprawling estate in San Francisco, with its polished marble floors and walls lined with my father's real estate awards, was a shrine to the Caldwell legacy, a legacy I was never meant to inherit. My brother, Ethan Caldwell, was the anointed heir, the golden child whose every achievement was celebrated as proof of the family's superiority. 38 now, a corporate lawyer with a smile that could charm or cut, Ethan was the mirror of our father, Richard Caldwell, 62, a retired real estate magnate whose sharp intellect and sharper temper ruled our home. Richard saw Ethan's ambition as a reflection of his own, praising his son's ruthless drive as the mark of a true Caldwell. My mother, Margaret Caldwell, 60, an event planner who orchestrated our family's flawless public image, played the role of peacekeeper, smoothing over Richard's harshness and Ethan's arrogance with a practiced smile. But her peacekeeping came at a cost. She ignored the injustices that festered beneath the surface, especially when they targeted me. I was the outlier, the troublemaker who dared to question the unspoken rules. From as early as I can remember, I felt the weight of their disapproval. When I was 7, I overheard Margaret tell a cousin, "Peyton doesn't know how to behave properly," her voice heavy with rehearsed disappointment, while Ethan, only 4 years older, was hailed as a prodigy for winning a school debate. My questions, why Ethan was never scolded for shoving me during arguments, why my drawings were dismissed while his trophies were displayed, were met with sighs or sharp rebukes. "Stop being so difficult," Richard would snap, his eyes cold, as if my curiosity was a personal affront. Psychologically, I was caught in a cycle of seeking approval I'd never earn. Every failure was magnified, every success downplayed. I learned to tiptoe around their expectations, my confidence eroding with each comparison to Ethan's brilliance. By adolescence, I'd built a fragile shell, hiding my hurt behind silence, counting the days until I could escape. 18, I fled to Seattle to study journalism at the University of Washington, drawn to a career that valued truth over appearances. The city's gray skies felt like a release from the suffocating shine of the Caldwell name. There, I met Nathan Brooks, 36, a software engineer whose quiet kindness saw through my guarded exterior. He listened when I spoke, laughed at my stories, and made me feel visible for the first time. We married when I was 22, too young, driven by my desperate hunger for a family that felt like home. Our wedding was modest, a stark contrast to the lavish affairs Margaret planned for clients. My parents attended with tight smiles, criticizing my simple dress and unconventional vows. Ethan, already a rising star at a top law firm, gifted us an ostentatious crystal vase and delivered a speech dripping with condescension. I never thought my little sister would find someone willing to take her on. The room laughed uneasily, but I felt the sting of his words, a reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. For a while, Nathan and I were happy in our small Seattle apartment. When Ava was born, a 7-pound bundle of joy with her father's green eyes and my unruly curls, I vowed she'd grow up knowing her worth, never questioning her right to exist as I had. But cracks appeared when Ava was 4. Nathan grew distant, his late nights at work piling up. I found text messages from a coworker, Lila, on his phone, intimate, betraying. He denied it, then confessed to a year-long affair. Counseling failed. His heart wasn't in it. By Ava's 5th birthday, we were divorced. I spared my family the details, saying only that we'd grown apart. Predictably, Margaret turned it against me. Men don't leave happy homes, Peyton. What did you do to push him away? Her words cut deeper than I'd admit, rekindling the self-doubt I'd fought to bury. As a freelance journalist, I struggled to make ends meet. Rent, daycare, and unexpected expenses like car repairs or Ava's medical bills stretched my budget thin. Swallowing my pride, I occasionally asked my parents for help. Each request came with a lecture from Richard about poor choices or a sigh from Margaret about my failure to plan. Meanwhile, Ethan thrived in a San Francisco mansion with his wife, Claire Caldwell, 35, a psychologist who radiated calm professionalism. They had no children, a choice Ethan framed as focusing on our careers, which my parents lauded as disciplined ambition. "If only you'd applied yourself like Ethan," Richard would say, his voice laced with disappointment, "you might have something to show for your life." Their favoritism wasn't just a preference, it was a weapon wielded to keep me small. Yet, despite the pain, I wanted Ava to know her family, to have the connections I'd craved. That hope led us to the Tahoe reunion, a decision that would expose the true cost of their toxicity. Despite the gnawing unease in my gut, I decided to bring Ava to the Caldwell family reunion at our lavish lake house on Lake Tahoe, the first time I'd returned in 3 years. 7. Ava was a whirlwind of energy, her love for singing and dancing lighting up our modest Seattle apartment. Her excitement for meeting cousins and splashing in the lake was infectious, and I wanted her to have the kind of joyful family memories I'd been denied. But I knew the cost. I'd have to be her shield, protecting her from the toxic undercurrents of the Caldwell clan that had scarred my childhood. I told myself I could handle a weekend, that I was no longer the timid girl who cowered under my family's judgment. I was wrong. Caldwell Lake House stood as a monument to wealth, its cedar facade gleaming under the Nevada sun, its expansive deck overlooking Lake Tahoe's shimmering waters. As I pulled our beat-up Honda into the driveway, dwarfed by Ethan's sleek Tesla and my parents' polished Mercedes, the familiar pang of inadequacy hit me like a wave. I was 34, a freelance journalist barely making ends meet, returning to a world that had always deemed me lesser. Ava, oblivious to my tension, bounced out of the car, her curls flying. "Mom, I want to see the lake now," she squealed, her voice bright with anticipation. I forced a smile, my heart tightening. "Let's say hi to everyone first, okay, sweetheart?" I said, gripping her hand a little too tightly. Inside, the air was thick with tension, the kind that hums beneath polite smiles and clinking glasses. My mother, Margaret, 60, glided toward us in a tailored silk suit, her event planner poise as impeccable as ever. Her eyes swept over me, lingering on my faded jeans and worn blazer before softening slightly for Ava. "You made it," she said, her hug stiff and perfunctory. "We thought you'd changed your mind." Her tone carried the usual undercurrent of disapproval, as if my presence was an inconvenience. My father, Richard, 62, stood by the stone fireplace, deep in a heated discussion about real estate markets with my uncle. He spared me a curt nod, his attention never straying from his conversation. Ethan and his wife, Claire, 35, a poised psychologist, emerged from the kitchen. Ethan's broad shoulders and cold, calculating smile mirrored our father's. "Well, look who's here," he announced, his voice loud enough to draw eyes. The prodigal sister and her noisy little sidekick. Ava pressed against my leg, her confidence dimming. "Hi, Uncle Ethan," she mumbled, her voice small. Claire offered a warm smile, the only genuine one in the room, but even she kept her distance, navigating the family's unspoken rules with care. As we settled into the smallest guest room, tucked away with a view of the neighbor's fence rather than the lake, I unzipped my suitcase and froze. Tucked inside was an old letter from Margaret, its edges yellowed, written years ago when I was 19. "Peyton," it read, "your refusal to join your father's firm is an embarrassment to the Caldwell name. Ethan never disappoints us like this." The words, in her elegant script, sliced through me, resurrecting memories of being called a failure for choosing journalism over the family business. I could still hear Richard's voice. "You'll never amount to anything with that attitude." Pain flared, raw and sharp, but I shoved the letter back into the suitcase. I couldn't let Ava see me unravel. She was chattering about swimming and singing for her cousins, her innocence a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I knelt beside her, brushing a curl from her face. "You're going to have so much fun," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. But doubt gnawed at me. Had I made a mistake bringing her here? That first evening, the reunion unfolded like a carefully staged play, every interaction laced with competition and judgment. Dinner, Richard grilled Ethan about his latest legal victories, his pride palpable, while Margaret critiqued my parenting with subtle jabs. "Ava's so spirited," she said, her tone implying chaos rather than joy. "Perhaps she needs more discipline." I bit my tongue, focusing on Ava, who was trying to join her cousin's games but was met with eye rolls and polite exclusion. The older kids, trained in the Caldwell hierarchy, mirrored their parents' dismissive attitude, correcting Ava's words or ignoring her enthusiasm. Watching her shrink, my heart ached with a familiar pain. I'd been that child, desperate to be seen, only to be silenced. As I tucked Ava into bed, she whispered, "Do they not like me, Mom?" Her question was a dagger, echoing my own childhood doubts. "They just don't know how special you are yet," I lied, kissing her forehead. But as I lay awake, the letter's words looping in my mind, I realized I'd underestimated the danger of bringing Ava into this viper's nest. Caldwell's hadn't changed, and I was about to learn just how far their cruelty could reach. The second morning of our Tahoe reunion dawned with sunlight streaming through the lake house's towering windows, bathing the grand living room in a golden glow. The room, with its vaulted ceilings and panoramic view of Lake Tahoe's shimmering waters, was designed to amplify every sound, from the clink of coffee cups to the laughter of relatives. Ava, my 7-year-old daughter, sat in a corner of the room, her small frame curled over a coloring book, humming her favorite song, a cheerful tune about friendship from a cartoon she adored. Her voice, clear and pure, rose into a confident melody, filling the space with a joy that made my heart swell. For a moment, I dared to believe this trip could be different, that Ava's light could pierce the Caldwell family's cold veneer. But then I noticed Ethan, my 38-year-old brother, his jaw tightening with each note she sang. His sharp, lawyerly eyes flicked toward me, cold and accusing, as if Ava's happiness was a personal offense. My mother, Margaret, 60, perched at the head of the oak dining table, her silk blouse pristine despite the morning's chaos. "Peyton," she called out, her voice cutting through Ava's song like a blade. "Your daughter's disturbing everyone. Can't you control her?" The room's chatter dimmed, heads turning. I opened my mouth to respond, to explain that Ava was just being a child, but before I could, Ethan shoved his chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. The sound was a warning, a prelude to something darker. My stomach lurched. I started toward Ava, weaving through relatives, but my aunt's voice stopped me, a trivial question about my job that stole precious seconds. In that fleeting moment, everything changed. Ethan strode toward Ava with the predatory grace of a man used to commanding rooms. She looked up, her green eyes wide with trust, still humming softly. Then, in a heartbeat, his hand arced through the air and struck her cheek with a crack that echoed like thunder. The room froze, the air sucked out of it. Ava stumbled backward, her coloring book tumbling to the floor, pages splayed like broken wings. A vivid red handprint bloomed on her pale cheek, and her small body trembled as tears welled in her eyes. Like mother, like daughter. "Both useless," Ethan snarled, his voice dripping with venom. He scanned the room, his broad shoulders squared as if expecting applause for his cruelty. My father, Richard, 62, leaned back in his chair, a smirk curling his lips. "That girl needs to learn proper manners," he said, his tone laced with satisfaction, as if Ava's pain was a lesson well delivered. Margaret's tinkling laugh followed, sharp and dismissive. "Peyton never did master the art of silence," she added, her words slicing into me like they had 1,000 times before. The room's silence was deafening, relatives averting their eyes, complicit in their inaction. Fury and heartbreak surged through me, a tidal wave that drowned my fear. I rushed to Ava, dropping to my knees and pulling her shaking body into my arms. Her sobs were muffled against my shoulder, each one a dagger to my heart. "What is wrong with you?" I screamed at Ethan, my voice raw with rage. "She's 7 years old." He crossed his arms, unfazed, his lawyer's composure intact. "Old enough to know the world doesn't revolve around her noise," he said coldly, his eyes locking onto mine with a challenge. I clutched Ava tighter, her warmth anchoring me against the storm of betrayal. In that moment, I saw my childhood reflected in her pain, the countless times I'd been dismissed, diminished, silenced. But this wasn't about me anymore. It was about Ava, who deserved better than the cruelty of a family that valued control over love. As her tears soaked my shirt, I made a silent vow I would protect her no matter the cost. Caldwell's had drawn a line, and I was ready to cross it. As Ava's sobs quieted in my arms, the weight of what had just happened crashed over me like a tidal wave. My brother Ethan, the untouchable Caldwell heir, had struck my 7-year-old daughter for singing, and my parents, Richard and Margaret, had laughed as if her pain was a trivial footnote in their perfect family narrative. The room's silence felt like complicity, every averted gaze a betrayal. But then I saw Lucas Bennett, my 40-year-old brother-in-law, a documentary filmmaker with a quiet integrity, standing motionless by his camera equipment. His face was pale, his eyes locked on the wireless microphone clipped to the table, still recording. In that moment, a spark of clarity cut through my rage. We had evidence. Undeniable proof of Ethan's cruelty and my parents' callousness. Lucas caught my gaze, and as the family resumed their chatter, pretending nothing had happened, he slipped upstairs after me. In the cramped guest room, with Ava clinging to me, Lucas pressed a USB drive into my trembling hand. "I saw everything, Peyton," he whispered, his voice low and urgent. The mic caught it all, the slap, Ethan's words, your parents' laughter. "It's all here. But be careful. They'll come for you when they realize." His warning sent a chill down my spine, but the weight of the USB felt like power, a weapon to wield against the family that had silenced me my whole life. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely audible. "We're leaving. Now." I packed our bags with shaking hands, Ava's tear-streaked face and the vivid handprint on her cheek fueling my resolve. I wouldn't let the Caldwells gaslight her into believing she deserved this. As we slipped out, Margaret intercepted us in the foyer, her eyes flashing with irritation. "You're overreacting, Peyton." It was just a tap. I shifted Ava to show the red mark, my voice steady despite my fury. "A tap doesn't leave a handprint, Mom." For a fleeting second, doubt flickered in her eyes, but she waved it away. "You're making a scene," she said. I didn't respond. I was done performing for them. We drove straight to Sophie Larson's apartment in Seattle, my 33-year-old best friend and an elementary school teacher whose warmth was a lifeline. Sophie met us at the door, her face crumpling as she saw Ava's bruise. "Stay as long as you need," she said, wrapping us both in a fierce hug. That night, after Ava fell into an exhausted sleep, Sophie and I listened to the recording on her laptop. The sound of Ethan's hand striking Ava's cheek was a gut punch, followed by his venomous words, "Like mother, like daughter." Both useless. Richard's smug, "That girl needs to learn proper manners," and Margaret's dismissive laugh tore at me. Tears streamed down my face, not just for Ava but for the little girl I'd been, dismissed and diminished. Sophie's hand gripped mine. "They're monsters," she whispered. "What are you going to do?" First, I took Ava to Dr. Rachel Foster, a 45-year-old child psychologist with a calm authority. After a gentle session, Dr. Foster confirmed what I feared. Ava was showing signs of trauma, nightmares, clinginess, and a new fear of men with loud voices, especially when they raised their hands. "She's processing a betrayal of trust," Dr. Foster said softly. "With support, she can heal, but this wasn't just a slap. It's shaken her sense of safety." Her words hardened my resolve. I filed a police report, though the officer, sympathetic but pragmatic, warned that prosecuting family discipline cases was tricky without visible injuries or witnesses. "The recording changes things," she added, "but it may not be admissible." Still, the report was a step, a formal record of Ethan's violence. I wasn't seeking a courtroom victory, I wanted accountability. Ethan, 38, a star at Brightstone Legal, had built his career on a pristine reputation, bolstered by his roles on a children's charity board and a youth mentorship program. His morality clause, something he'd bragged about, demanded ethical conduct. I crafted a measured email, attaching a carefully edited clip of the recording, the slap, Ethan's useless comment, my parents' reactions, sent to Brightstone's board, the charity's leadership, and the mentorship program's organizers. I requested anonymity to protect Ava's privacy, framing my action as a moral duty given Ethan's influence over children. Within hours, my phone lit up with Ethan's panicked calls. "What have you done, Peyton?" "They're launching an investigation." His voice cracked, the untouchable lawyer unraveling. Richard's texts were cold. "You're destroying this family." Margaret's veered from guilt-tripping to pleading. "Call us. We can fix this." I blocked them all, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and defiance. For the first time, I held the power to expose their truth. A month later, my grandmother, Evelyn Caldwell, 85, a retired teacher whose stern wisdom commanded respect, summoned the family to her Victorian home in Portland. "I want both sides of this story," she declared over the phone, her voice unyielding. I arrived alone, leaving Ava with Sophie to shield her from further conflict. The living room was a pressure cooker, the air thick with unspoken grudges. Ethan sat by the fireplace, his eyes bloodshot, his usual polish replaced by a haggard edge. Claire, his wife, sat apart, her face unreadable, her psychologist's calm barely masking her tension. Richard and Margaret perched on an antique sofa, their composure a fragile mask. Evelyn entered last, leaning on her cane, her presence silencing the room. "I've heard the recording," she began, her voice cutting like steel. "Ethan's actions are unforgivable. And Richard, Margaret, you encouraged it." Ethan leaned forward, his voice tight. "It was just a light slap. Everyone's blowing this out of proportion." Evelyn's eyes flashed. Slapping a child is an abuse of power, not discipline, she snapped. You broke her trust. I found my voice trembling but clear. Ava has nightmares, Ethan. She's afraid to sing, the one thing that brought her joy. She asked me if she was bad because of what you and Mom and Dad said. My words hung in the air, raw and heavy. Richard stood, his face red with indignation. You're tearing this family apart out of jealousy for Ethan's success, he roared. Evelyn raised her hand, silencing him. No, she said firmly. Peyton protected her daughter, something you failed to do. You should have stopped him. The room crackled with tension, years of suppressed truths bubbling to the surface. Claire's silence spoke volumes, her eyes fixed on the floor. Margaret's mask slipped, her voice wavering. We just wanted harmony, she said, but Evelyn shook her head. Harmony built on silence is complicity. I felt a strange mix of vindication and grief. I'd spent my life craving their approval, but now, standing up for Ava, I saw them for who they were, enablers of a system that valued image over humanity. Confrontation wasn't over, but the lines were drawn. I'd exposed their darkness, and there was no going back. 6 months after Ethan's unthinkable act at the Tahoe Lake House, our lives have transformed in ways I never imagined. My brother, once the untouchable star of Brightstone Legal, now languishes in a back-office role, his once glittering career tarnished by his own actions. The Children's Charity Board severed ties with him, and the elite circles of San Francisco's high society whisper his name with disdain, their invitations replaced by awkward silences. Claire, his wife, finalized their divorce, stepping out of his shadow to rebuild her life with a quiet strength I've come to admire. She confided in me over coffee, her voice steady but raw, that leaving Ethan freed her from years of walking on eggshells. My parents, Richard and Margaret, have grudgingly begun family therapy, their sessions marked by tense silences and halting admissions. I've set firm boundaries, allowing them only brief, supervised visits with Ava. Their attempts at reconciliation feel more like damage control than genuine remorse, but I hold the line, protecting my daughter's heart at all costs. Ava, my brave 7-year-old, is healing. Her nightmares have faded, and her voice, once silenced by fear, rings out again. She's joined a children's choir, her clear, joyful notes filling our small Seattle apartment with life. Watching her smile return, brighter than ever, feels like a miracle. I too have changed. My courage in confronting my family translated to my career, earning me a promotion to editor at a local newspaper. The raise means I no longer need my parents' financial help, severing their last hold over me. Through a support group for families navigating trauma, I've found a new community, a chosen family who share my story and draw strength from it. Speaking at local workshops, I've seen my experience resonate, inspiring others to break free from toxic patterns. Ethan's slap didn't just wound Ava, it exposed the rot at the heart of the Caldwell family. From that pain, I found the strength to protect my daughter and dismantle the cycle of abuse that shaped my childhood. Here are 5 lessons I've learned, shared for anyone facing their own battles. First, trust your instincts to protect those you love, even when it means standing alone. Second, boundaries are not betrayal, they're acts of self-respect and safety. Third, healing is possible with support. Find your community, whether it's friends or strangers who share your values. Fourth, speaking truth to power, though terrifying, can spark change beyond your own life. Fifth, a child's worth is non-negotiable. Never let anyone dim their light. These lessons, forged in pain, have become my guiding stars. This journey has taught me that true family is built on love and respect, not blood or obligation. If my story resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to family to protect what's right? Your story matters. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel to join us in spreading stories of courage and healing. Together, we can amplify the message that every child deserves to be loved, heard, and cherished without fear or shame. Thank you for walking this path with us.